Welcome to the Tom Matt Show. You are walking through the front door of the refirement zone. And now, your host, Tom Matt.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Tom Matt Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Last week, Brock was back doing his trends in real estate for 2025. That's how we start the year off, everybody. You know, we try to get Craig in here, and we did the financial side of things. And then we do Brock, the real estate side of things, right at the beginning of the year so that you guys can get some fresh input, fresh data, fresh ideas at what we're going to do about, you know, living the best life that you can live. My guest today, David Walker. This is going to be a very interesting show because you talk about refirement. This guy is the walking example of refirement. I've only met David about a month ago at an event out at Michigan State. It was a really nice event through Albert Cohen. Dr. Albert Cohen introduced us, and I knew immediately. I knew when Albert introduced me to David. David's a special guy, and so we're going to do some things here. Let me do a real quick snapshot on his bio. David's a very educated guy. He went to Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, Bachelor of Science in Economics and Mathematics. He's a math guy. You're going to learn a lot about math today. Actuarial science. The actuary speaks the value of human capital is what I'm calling this episode because that's where David's really shining with what he wants to share with us, the value of human capital and how we value that in business. He went to the Wharton School of Business. He has been all over the place, and this resume is just too long to go through the whole thing, but just special areas of expertise. Business processes, value-based marketing, organizational development. You get the picture? He's a business guy. He does his thing. But also the coolest thing about David is his refirement life with his musical talent and all of the things he's done with his music. I'm just going to save that for him and let him tell the story because it's a cool one. But some of the bands he played with as a younger guy, impressive. I want to welcome to the radio program my new friend, good guy, David Walker. David, how are you, brother?
I'm fine, Tom. What a beginning that is. I hope I can live up to half of it.
Well, I try to do my best, man. You know, it's this whole thing, and I'm so impressed with your background and everything that you've done in your life. And I knew when we first talked, it was like, oh, yeah, we're going to have some fun conversations. I was just trying to figure out, as you know, I was trying to figure out, well, how do I best present you and your talent and the things that you want to talk about? And it's just like, then it all started to come together once we had that conversation. So you know the drill here. We're going to do This Is Your Life, talk about your family, your spouse, your kids, whatever you want, grandkids, if you have some. I don't know that for sure. But go right ahead. Please talk about you and everything. And where am I talking to you from? Hickory, North Carolina, huh?
Right. I retired from Hickory, North Carolina from Chicago and then from New York. I had moved from New York to Chicago and then finally retired into Hickory, North Carolina.
How do you like that?
I like Hickory. I like Hickory a lot. And the South is different. I was born in Montgomery, Alabama, so it's like I was coming home a bit, but the people here are very welcoming. One of my children is a OBGYN down here, and her husband's a doctor. So it makes it easy to be close to family here. They've got 2 children, and they're my grandkids, so it's great to visit them, though they're off at college and working now.
Well, okay, so let's name them off because you know what? When they listen to the podcast or the radio broadcast, the family always likes to hear their name, and especially the grandkids. But the daughter, please talk about your family. Go right ahead.
Okay, my wife is Susie. She is a graduate of Pennsylvania University of Pennsylvania. She has a degree in. She was excuse me, I'm getting this wrong. She graduated in 2 years, magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, and with a degree in statistics. So, she and I have to work things out pretty infinitesimally, given our degrees. At any rate, we have 6 children, 1 boy, who's the last one, and 5 girls. They beat him up pretty regularly, so he became a hockey player, I guess, within the sports. But at that point, the oldest daughter is with the investment community. She is 55. The one after that, and I'm going to get these ages wrong, so I'm going to stop guessing. Allison is the doctor here in town. She's an OBGYN, and then I have a PhD who's at the University of Cincinnati. She runs her psych department. I then have a daughter that didn't go to college, but she's a business lady and runs a horse farm of 50 horses, saddlebreds. Then after that, I've got a daughter who is a master's degree from Harvard, and she works as a school psychologist in that department. She's also a coach. And after that, I've got my son, Edward, who is 38, and he is in a very niche business in the insurance industry and doing extremely well. And he's got a child on the way, and that'll be our 13th grandchild.
Congratulations, my friend. That's so fantastic. 13 grandchildren. It's just, it's a wonderful life. And it's like talking about your daughter who is an OBGYN. Well, all your children, even the daughter that didn't go to college, they all seem successful. I always like to ask parents, what's the secret sauce, bro? you're on radio, you're doing a video here. It's like, okay, you obviously did something right 6 times over, and now we have 13 grandchildren. Do you have something in a snapshot version that you'd like to share with the world?
Actually, it's hard to say. I try to set a working example that working, regardless of what you do and regardless of what you make, working is really important that you do it well and you dedicate yourself. I was big on education. The one daughter just didn't want to go to college, but she loved horses, so I supported that. At one time, my wife owned 3 horses, and they all had an opportunity to ride. So 2 of them did. 2 of them still are. One goes to horse shows and owns 2 horses, and the other owns a farm. So I encouraged them to do what they did well. My son was highly ADD and had a lot of trouble concentrating. So I had to figure out what I could do to help him concentrate. And actually, it turned out that he did his homework while the television was on. And that provided enough distraction for him to concentrate. Now, I know that seems like an oxymoron or juxtaposition, but the more television he watched, the better grades he got. And so he went ahead to Michigan and graduated with a double major and is doing very well.
That's awesome. Such a great story. I love hearing about the families and all of this. You know, when we talk about the Actuary Speaks, and I need about a quick minute definition of this here, of David, because we're going to go to break here in a second. Can you just give the listeners a snapshot of what an actuary is? We're going to talk a lot about actuarial science today. And the reason why we're going to talk about actuarial science is the human capital. Can you give a quick snapshot, please?
Actuary is so different than an accountant. Accountant is really measuring a defined period of time, usually a profit and loss statement, for 1 year or possibly 3, and developing the annual report. They're really valuable from the standpoint of keeping track of all the numbers and departments and profit and loss and balance statements. And it's required, of course, it's a public company, especially for all the folks that are buying stock. And if it's a private company, it's really important for the owners of the company to understand where we are.
We'll come back, David. Let me get you to finish that definition when we come back from break here, because we're coming up on this, and I want to reset this thing. Okay, we're calling this When the Actuary Speaks: The Value of Human Capital. Everyone, my guest today is David B. Walker, my friend that I met recently at an event at Michigan State University. One of the smartest guys I've ever met, and hanging out with a Dr. Albert Cohen and meeting people like David B. Walker, crazy. I've got some things I want to share with you about music and math. And we're going to hear it right from the mathematician himself. You're listening to The Tom Matt Show.
This segment of The Tom Matt Show is brought to you in part by The Source of Light and Power by band leader Archibald and broadcaster Mitch Anderson. Hear the sound that is endorsed by Odyssey headphones, linear tube audio, RME converters, and Peluso microphones at sourceoflightandpower.bandcamp.com.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of the Tom Matt Show. I am your host, Tom Matt. This segment is sponsored by Craig Stiles. Full disclosure, Craig Stiles has all of our refirement zone savings, all of it, with Ameriprise Financial, because we trust him. We trust him. We trust Brock with our real estate. We trust all of this because you want to plan for the life you want today and well into the future. Just kind of like the show today that when we have David B. Walker on here talking about actuarial science and the value of human capital, you have to understand the power of compounding. Craig talks about this all the time, and keeping things straight with the right financial advisor, with the right smart people in your life. Life can be brilliant. Please call Craig 1-800-528-1355, everybody. Local number is 517-483-4893. His email is craig.stiles@ampf.com. That's craig.stiles@ampf.com. His offices are located 2651 Coolidge Road, Suite 103, East Lansing, Michigan 48823. Stations that have carried us, stations that carry us. We've been on broadcast radio for quite some time now, and we come and go on different stations, but we're on the Michigan Talk Network. Here are some of the stations in and out of the network. WGHN 92.1 FM in Grand Haven, Michigan, carried us for a long time. First station ever to carry us on broadcast radio. So grateful to Will Tiemann and Wendy Hart. WGIM 1240 AM in Lansing is the flagship of the Michigan Talk Network. WGRW 1340 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. WKLQ 1490 Muskegon Whitehall over on the west side of the state. WYPV FM 94.5 in Mackinac City, northern part of the state. And then, of course, WKAR AM 870 and simulcast on 102.3 FM in East Lansing, Michigan. They are our PBS affiliate, and we're so proud to be out there at Michigan State University. Thank you, Brad, for what you do for us. And thank you to Craig Stiles once again for sponsoring the second segment and supporting us and being our financial fitness guru, creating Decideri Analytics, where we are making light of weighted decisions. Analytics, algorithms, all of this so important. We're going to talk about a lot of these things today with our guest, David B. Walker. The actuary speaks the value of human capital. Lastly, I want to say thank you to Steve and Ivy Gruber for carrying us on their syndication on the Michigan Talk Network. They are the smartest people around, and not because they carry me, just because they're just really, really good people. All right. So again, my guest today, David B. Walker, and David and I met recently, thanks to Dr. Albert Cohen, at the Simon event at Michigan State University. Very, very nice event. I was very happy to go there with my wife Sandy and some friends, and we got to meet David and talking about things. And the way the show's going to go, everybody, you know how I love talking about refirement and how we change throughout life. Well, things happen throughout life, and David has been around, and he's done some great things in his life. Before we get into the deep dive of his musical career, I want to finish off with the thread that I dropped off with at the previous segment of what an actuary actually is, because David is an actuary. I was trying to figure out what David, I was trying to figure out, what do you call, is it an actuarialist? And then I looked it up. It's just actuary, right?
All right. A actuary is defined as really within the exam taking mode. And an actuary that is truly accomplished will achieve a fellow in the Society of Actuaries. That's 10 exams. And they're very, very hard exams and very, very highly respected people. 5 exams is an associate actuary, and these exams are obviously difficult on the way to becoming a fellow in the society, and you're known as an associate. Then others are in an exam-taking mode under Dr. Cohen, all right? Actuary can call themselves an actuary and not have any exams. But from that standpoint, the most respected part of the actuarial field are 5 exams and 10 exams.
Got it.
Now, an actuary will measure periods of time in a different way than an accountant. An accountant will measure it in a 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year segment, and in projecting results, we'll do it in what's called a deterministic way. We're going to project it at 5%, we'll project it at 6%, maybe 3%, but whatever they're projected, they usually do it at a fixed period of time. An actuary, among other things, has the ability to project on a present value basis. In other words, what's the future value and present value of this current operation? And that's far, far more detailed, and that's called stochastic modeling. So they will determine it on a deterministic basis, which is basically a great big average, but it's rolling the dice. That, among other things, like pension valuation, healthcare costing analysis, life insurance, mortality and morbidity payments. Each of these is a separate discipline within the actuarial field. And it's a very difficult exam, but very highly paid. Any of those folks that I presented to at Dr. Cohn's class will probably be in the area starting salary of $50,000 to $75,000 right out of college.
That's awesome. And it's very, very challenging. From our pre-show notes, I had this really great quote idea, analogy that David came up with. David Walker's our guest today, everybody. David, you said that mathematicians are musicians, and this is my segue into your musical career, but can you explain to the listeners why, because you are a mathematician, an economics person, why mathematicians are musicians?
You ask difficult questions, and I know that's why you have this program. As good as you are, I'm going to have trouble answering that, only because some of the biggest mathematicians in our history were also musicians, like Einstein and Mozart. Numbers and music were very easy for them. And I don't know why. I can't tell you why that is. But if you suggest to a mathematician that they should play music, I don't know that it is easily accomplished as if you suggest to a musician to become a mathematician. I mean, I think if you go one way, music to math might be easier than math to music. And I'm not sure why that is. It just makes sense.
That's the thing where when I'm listening to you talk, and as an actuary, this is a high pressure job. I'm thinking as a release, as a hobby, as something that keeps you balanced, because in life, and I talk about this a lot, David, we have to have multiple inputs into our life, obviously, to have a balanced life. And so being just focused on one thing is not going to be conducive to having a very solid foundation to your whole existence. So I look at that and I think that's why. And for those of you that are watching the video, and if you're just picking this up on radio, you might want to go check out the video on YouTube, because in the video you can see that David has 4 guitars hanging on the wall behind him in the video. And I've never had a guest on the show who had any guitars hanging on the wall. So I just have to say that's pretty cool. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the early journey in David Walker's career and life, as far as his musical career, and then we're going to move into the value of human capital. So stick around, because this one's good. Again, the Actuary Speaks, the value of human capital. David B. Walker. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to our Segment 2 sponsor, Craig Stiles of Ameriprise Financial. For more information on services provided by Craig, please visit ameripriseadvisors.com/Craig.Stiles or by calling 517-483-4893. You're tuned in to The Tom Matt Show.
Welcome to The Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Tom Matt Show. I'm your host, Tom Matt. The Actuary Speaks, the value of human capital. Why would we want to put a math genius on the radio program, an actuary, and to talk about the value of human capital? Well, let me explain it to you this way. When I met David, he was at a math conference at Michigan State University, and it was really interesting, and we're trying to put this all together. Math is very important. Just like for our sponsor of this segment, math is important to Brock Fletcher and the selling team of Keller Williams Realty, because numbers make the deal. That's the whole thing with all of this. And this is where it's very, very important to understand the value of money, the value of present value, future value, all of these things. Brock is the guy you want to talk to with your present value and future value for your home. 517-853-6408 is his local number. That's to the office. His cell phone, which he prefers everyone to use, 517-303-3262, 517-303-3262, or you can go online to kwsellingteam.com. Our website, TomMattShow.com, has all of our sponsors at the bottom of the homepage, so you can go there as well. You can sell your home without hassles, just like we did. You guys have heard this story over and over and over, where Brock helped my neighbor who came over to me for some advice. He needed to sell his house quickly. We had just bought Little House Lansing thanks to Mike Dedman at the selling team. He told me a number. I said, what number are you thinking about for your home? And he said, I think with this number. I told him I thought it was low. You need to talk to my buddy Brock. Long story short, he got $20,000 more than he was thinking, and he had it done in a week. And that's a true story, okay? So that's what you got to think about when you're dealing in real estate. You got to get a hold of Brock. Brock is the man. He's our guy. He sold Big Household. He helped us buy Little House Lansing, where we're recording this episode today, and the rest is history. So without Brock and having him as a sponsor, we are in deep, deep, deep trouble. All right. The Actuary Speaks, The Value of Human Capital is the title of today's episode. It's a kind of a winding kind of thought here is what I wanted to do, because my guest today, David Walker, is such a cool guy who has had such a really great career. I mean, during break, we're talking about his guitars that he has. You can see this on the video, everybody. His guitars hang on the wall that I could see, and he's got more in his studio that he's recording this with me today. But he also made a couple of the guitars. Let's talk about your musical career there, Mr. Walker. I have the list of some of the bands that you played with in your younger days. Bro, you played with the Beach Boys, Glenn Campbell. I saw the Coasters. I saw the Coasters. Coasters played at a bar that I attended at in California. Everly Brothers, Tina Turner. The list is huge. You want to start on that and just talk about that a little bit? That had to be, I got so many questions on this stuff, but I need you to just kind of fill in the gaps, how this all started. How did that start?
I met a fellow named John Webb who was at a music store, and he played the quarter box. That's an electric sweet spot. And he was talking, he was part of the band, and he said he was putting together a band. And I said, well, I play lead guitar, I'd like to play. I had just moved to California. So we went ahead and we decided to get together and play. And he introduced me to Dave Costell, who was another guitar player, and David Ramsey, who was also a guitar player. And Ramsey said that he had a good singer and drummer that he'd like to introduce us to. It was a friend of his. And I said, okay, let's give it a try. And we got in the car and we went and drove to Hollywood. And then as we were up to the Bel Air gate, somebody asked, is Mr. Walker here? And of course, Mr. Walker is my father. I didn't know what he was talking about. And it was the guard. And he took us up to a very, very large house. And the minute we walked in the door, I met Gary Lewis, and his father was not too far behind it, Jerry Lewis, the comedian. And so that was the start. They had a studio in the house at that time, and we began practicing. And the long and the short of it is, I helped negotiate a contract with Disneyland to play at their one of their venues. And I might have had some help from Mr. Lewis. I had a feeling I did. At any rate, there were stars down there and had a wonderful time playing at Disneyland. It's a wonderful venue. And we had a great bunch of people come. And we developed a following. And it wasn't long after that we recorded our first record, This Diamond Ring, which sold 1 million copies. I probably interrupted a bit, but having said that, this is what they used to hand out during the old days.
And for those people who are wondering what the heck's going on with the radio broadcast, my friend David B. Walker is holding his gold record from that. What's the name of the tune?
This Diamond Ring.
This Diamond Ring, which I have heard, and I know. I got to ask you though, man. Are you telling me that Gary Lewis was Jerry Lewis's son?
Yes.
You know what? I never knew that. I'm so glad learning things is so great. I love this kind of stuff. So Gary Lewis and the Playboys, for those of you who are going, Gary Lewis, that sounds kind of familiar. Is that right? Am I saying this correct? Gary Lewis and the Playboys was the band, right? Okay, so you start off with Gary Lewis and the Playboys, and you're playing at Disneyland. And I've been to Disneyland many times because I lived in Southern California for 15 years, so I know Disneyland really well. I can probably figure out where the heck they had you guys. And that's super cool. Of all of the people on this list, this giant list of people you've played with, even the 8 seconds with the Beatles, which I thought was pretty hilarious. I got to ask you about that first. Okay, let's go there first, because you had 8 seconds with the Beatles. What was that about?
There was a long line of people that were meeting the Beatles. And Gary was able to walk us up, and we would buy them, and that was about it. I mean, it was like a receiving line at a wedding.
Oh, okay.
See, it wasn't like we spent a lot of time.
I got you. Okay. So of this list, is Gary Lewis being the top guy that you first met? Who in the top? Give us your top 3 or 4 of these artists and bands that you were with, because you've got so many. I mean, you got the Motown bands. You've got, just you take it. I don't even know where to start with all of this. Tom Jones. I mean, dude, you're famous.
No, actually, who was famous, and I really have to give him credit. Gary Lewis was a very generous leader of the band. He did not have to have us. We had a band, but I think he probably could have gone off on his own without having anybody like us in the band. He could have had side men, and then he would be the key person, but he was generous enough to share royalties with us when he did not have to do it. So he really was the key to the band. And after that, we went to Sunset Studios and did a lot of records. We had 7 records when I was with them, and 3 long-playing albums. And they went on, and I went back to school. Because of Vietnam, I did not want to be an officer in infantry. I was in ROTC, so I had to return to school or go to Vietnam, and I took the easier choice.
There you go. So let's take a pause there, because we're going to come up on break here. My guest today, I'm going to reset this thing, is David B. Walker. We got more stories to come with you, and then we're going to talk about the value of human capital, because David's going to be back with us talking about this very important topic, because it's the most important piece to a business is the people. We'll talk about that here when we come back. I want to finish the thread of all of the music that we've been dealing with David and some of these bands, because there is so much more to this. It's just so fascinating to me. Again, the Actuary speaks. We're talking his musical career here, the value of human capital. You see where I like the refirement zone, everybody, with David? Absolutely no doubt about it. You're listening to The Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to our segment 3 sponsor, White Law PLLC, where justice meets compassion. White Law is your advocate in times of need. We are here to listen, support, and fight for what you deserve. Contact White Law today for your free consultation. Visit us at whitelawpllc.com or call 517-777-9785.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the 4th segment of the Tom Matt Show. Remember our sponsors, Brock, Craig, Brock Fletcher, selling team of Keller Williams Realty, 517-303-3262. And then you have Craig, who has all of our retirement zone savings over there. Call him at 517-483-4893. Remember, both of these companies that we work with, our sponsors, are national companies. They're big. So if you are in California, or if you're in North Carolina, where my guest is today, David B. Walker, wherever, Ameriprise, Keller Williams, they all have offices all over the country, and my guys will vet them for you. They're good guys. They will take your call. No problem. Tell me you heard it from Tommy, and away we go. David B. Walker is my guest today. The Actuary speaks the value of human capital. What does that mean? Well, we'll talk about that in a second here. David, I made the note of talking about your radio host, and we're talking about your career as a musician in your younger days, and we didn't finish the thread. I didn't come back to it, and I apologize for that. I want to talk about your quick foray into the entertainment business, because you went into the guitar playing and you became a DJ in Hawaii. Talk about that for a second, because you were the weatherman in Hawaii. How tough a gig was that?
It was one of the, that's why they hired me. I hardly got paid anything, because all you had to do was look outside and see the weather. And I was always the same. It rained at noon, and after it rained, it got sunny, and then the sun went down at about 8 o'clock. It was wonderful.
How did you score a gig like that in Hawaii, of all places? How did that happen?
Well, you've got to remember, this was 1966 or so, and things weren't as developed in Hawaii as they are now. So I just ran into somebody at the Davy Jones Walker bar, and we were talking, and he learned about, I had just left the band. And so I think he made the connection that, well, if you're a band and a performer, you obviously can do something on radio. And so it was I said yes when I probably should have said nothing. So I got to do that. And, the Walker Wingding, Channel 95, Walker Wingding.
Nice. I love it. And you got a copy of This Diamond Ring, which David played on, Gary Lewis and the Playboys, gold record, million seller. So that leads us back into where I want to talk about with some of these bands that are on this list. I mean, from the Drifters, the Beach Boys. I got to ask you about Glenn Campbell, because you're a guitar player. I'm not a musician, but I know that Glenn Campbell was very renowned for his guitar picking. And he could still play even after he had his illness later in his life. What do you have anything you could talk about with Glenn Campbell? And how good of a player was? Was he as good as they say?
Yeah. Maybe you should have heard him. Maybe at some point you should listen to the fact that he played the William Tell Overture on his guitar. And he was just an excellent guitar player. He was a studio player. He played with a lot of studio guitar players and behind a lot of groups that you probably didn't know. Like even the studio guitar player for the Beach Boys. Okay? And he played with a group called the Wrecking Crew. And he was on a lot of records that people didn't even know he was playing. He was just a studio musician. He wrote songs, and he was a very nice guy. I mean, really approachable, wasn't arrogant, and just a really, really solid guy.
Was there competition amongst guitar players? That guy's better than the other guy, or is it kind of like the brotherhood of like athletes? What is it like, David, with at your high end of the professionalism of professional musicians? Is there like a lot of competition, or is it like a brotherhood?
Probably some, but among the good players, no one cared. We all wanted to play together, and no one looked, I'm better than that guy, or that wasn't a part of it. If you were a musician and you sang and you played, it was, it was the ultimate diversity. We had black players, we had all manner of players, and it didn't matter. We could get in a circle and start playing and singing on the bus, and it was fun. No one was doing a comparative analysis. When we did a show with Gene Pitney, how do you compare yourself with a voice like Gene Pitney? I mean, you didn't. There are some that were just like Tom Jones, far beyond some of the folks that we were with. So, no, there wasn't that much at all. I don't remember it being anything that I would have remarked on at the time.
That was a great segue. You gave me a perfect segue into our topic for today of the value of human capital, because now I understand where you got your deep belief in the diversity. It came from your music career as a young age, and you carried that through because you were always like that. You were always into the diversity. Let's talk about this because of our bullet points that we want to talk about: the rise of diversity, dedication, business experience with racism, and continued effort at change. First, let's talk about the major business economic systems. You sent me a slide of the companies, the types of companies that will use your value of human capital without coming up with a better term for that. It's just the actual metric for that. Please talk about this a little bit. Talk about the why is people understanding the value of human capital and diversity. Why is this so important for us to have a culture moving forward in our country?
My father taught me diversity. He was a flight instructor for some of the Tuskegee Airmen. And as such, I was raised without any race.
Your dad taught the Tuskegee Airmen?
Yes, he did.
Wow.
And I grew up with racism not being a part of our family at all. My father was very much against racism and taught some of the airmen how to fly, and actually some of them were escorts to the bombers. So he's the guy that started me out on diversity. He would not stand for racism in any form. I just took it from there and then developed into music. And when you're playing with music with somebody like B.B. King, or when you're playing with Ahmad Jamal, or listening to him, or you're listening to Chuck Berry, no one cares what color you are. If you're a musician, you're equal. You're dedicated to the music. And so that was the joy I had, because it was an easy transition for me. I was already non-racist, and it just fit in greatly. And they could see it in my eyes, and they can see it in the way I related to them.
I think that most human beings, and you can give me your opinion on this, David, but I think that most people, the majority of the people, could care less. I mean, it's like, you're a person. I could care what you believe in, who you believe in, what color you are, any of that. It makes no difference. I mean, when you have multicultural country like we have, the melting pot, the great melting pot that we have, getting along is so fun. It's like me going to the gym and I train with young people every day. And it's like they accept me. I'm the oldest, at least one of the oldest guys in the gym. But they accept me because I accept them. And it goes both ways. And this is where we got to talk about with this diversity. So the rise of the diversity dedication. Set this up, David, because we're going to come up on break here, and I want to get your quick snapshot on that. What do you mean by that? When you say the rise of diversity dedication, what does that mean to you?
What it means to me is I started with being non-racist. Then I became dedicated to diversity. And then I began to see how that fit into the human capital model of a business. You have 8% or 6% minority, and then the rest white, or you have a different mix. And what does that mean for the value of the corporation? And how do I create a metric that would measure that value so I could see how the inclusion of different races would impact profits? And that's what interests me the most.
And so through your studies, I know we got about 30 seconds to go here, but through your studies, you have discovered that if you apply these principles to business, that the business can be more successful, correct?
Moreover, in measuring the value of a business in an acquisition, please remember to measure the value of human capital, because it might be different in another organization, which is why 70% of mergers fail because of culture.
Okay, so we're going to hold that thought there. 70% of mergers fail because of culture. And we're going to talk about this because it's the human capital, and we have the man, the actuary speaks, the value of human capital. Not only is this man refired several times in his life, but he's still going strong. And he's still out there pushing his thoughts and helping people get better. And that's why we have him on the radio program. Because 70% of mergers fail because of you can't blend them together. We need David in here, David B. Walker, to come in and help us decide. You're listening to Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to our segment 4 sponsor, Brock Fletcher, real estate agent at the selling team with Keller Williams Realty. For more information on services provided by Brock, please call his personal cell phone at 517-303-3262 or by emailing Brock at kwsellingteam.com. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the fifth segment of the Tom Matt Show. Calling this one, The Actuary Speaks, the Value of Human Capital. Expert in human capital. Yeah, good to have an actuary on the team now. David B. Walker's my friend. I met David recently, and I knew that we would jive, and I know Dr. Albert Cohen's going to be really thrilled when he gets the message from me that we just completed his interview. It's been really cool. David Walker is a very specialized person. There's only certain people that are going to want to contact David, so I'm going to preface this contact information, let David kind of share with you the people that might want to be in touch with him, because he's very specialized and he's not out there like seeking speaking engagements and doing all these things. He's got a full life. So go ahead, David. Tell the listeners who would want to get a hold of you and why.
I would like to hear from chief financial officers or chief human resource officers in small to medium-sized companies, let's say in the $100 million to $500 million range, about any solutions they're seeking in the cost areas regarding human resources, whether it's pension planning, 401k planning, whether it's healthcare costs, and whether it's hiring problems and creating an environment where people are choosing that company over others for very specific reasons that they can see and feel. That's the kind of fun I like to have at my age and at my place in life.
How would you like them to connect with you? Contact me, or would you like to put an email out there? What would you like to do, David? We can do it in whatever way you want to do it.
I really have a lot of trust in you and your experience, so I'd rather you be the filter for anything that comes through.
No problem at all. So what we'll do then, everyone, if you need, if you meet the qualifications of what David just mentioned, if you're that size company and you need his help with those specific things, because he's very, very, very specific as an actuary, send me a note on the contact box of our website, and I will make sure that I forward that over to David, and we will do it in that direction. I want to go back to the thread we were talking about in the previous segment, David. Again, David B. Walker's my guest today, everybody. The Actuary Speaks, the Value of Human Capital, and now we're talking about human capital. Why, in heaven's name, if we have all these mergers in the world and you see these companies buying each other up all the time, you hear about these, you hear about these structured plans where people come in and buy you up, or they're hostile or they're non-hostile takeovers or whatever. But why, you said that 70% of mergers fail. That's a lot. That's a big number. I mean,
let's define fail.
Okay, let's define fail.
Fail means they did not meet the initial expectations of the merger or the acquisition. If you're expecting this profit level and this kind of result to happen, and you get this result, you spend a lot of money to get this result, and a lot of people leave, or something happens, and there's a workers' comp problems. They don't work to the extent of the expectation of both companies. And that's a very, very bad number. It could be a lot better if they had the value of 50 to 75% of the assets that walk out the door that are not valued on the balance sheet.
Okay, so I'm looking at your fact sheet here. Public companies' balance sheets do not value human resources as a group and the intrinsic value that they contribute to their success. I have heard at the university for years and years, I've been at the university for 25 years, that the most important asset that we have at the university are the people. So, there's some companies out there that really understand this, but it seems like there's a lot that don't. How do we help them get better?
Your question is really, really deep. And I think a lot of companies don't consider, but let's make it positive. Many companies who choose their management team put high emphasis on finance, all right, on numbers, on profitability, on, the metrics that go in net operating income, that sort of thing. And that's very important. But once again, they don't put a lot of value on hiring, let's say, a top-notch human resource officer, a CHRO, CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer. Oftentimes, the person is put into a personnel role, which is basically administrative. The top companies in this country consider that job equal to a chief operating officer.
So, David, talking about this here, and we're looking at this, according to one of your facts here, depending on the nature of major economic business systems, I'm reading this right off the slide, everybody, human capital makes up an average of between 60 to 90% of unvalued company assets. That seems outrageous to me. I mean, can you explain that, please?
I can't, because there has been no method of measurement that anybody will accept or an accountant will accept as being valuable enough for them to sign their name to. The 90%, for instance, what assets do you think Microsoft has more than people? Computers. That's it. People and computers. So with most of their assets walk out the door every day. So if you had a merger between a Microsoft and an Apple, which would not occur, you're talking about people that aren't valued. So it roils the markets. It creates bid and pull on stock values because they can't get to the right number through algorithm or mathematics.
Have you figured out a way to do this?
I'm not sure I'm the only one, but my researchers come up with a way that I think I'd like to do it. I just can't get anybody interested in trying it out.
The thing that caught my ear from you, David B. Walker's our guest today, everybody, was you were saying you got the system, but you need the data.
Well, you actually said, I think I do have the system. The comparative data are really important. If you've got two companies, you need to have a database in that strip of company, in that size of company, in that trading value of company, in order to say, okay, I have a comparator to put it against. So if I come up with a number of my own company, and here's my human capital value, the other company is requiring you saying, I don't agree with that value and I'm not going to buy it because I have nothing to compare it to. They ought to have their own, and there ought to be a massive database out there so you can compare these two to that database so you get an accurate reading. And so it eventually is put on the balance sheet.
You know what it made? You know what just popped into my head just now? David B. Walker's our guest today, David, the thought that popped into my head, I had this conversation recently with someone, was on electronic medical records and how when it first started, the internet and everything started rolling with this, they had all of this great ideas. Oh, we're going to combine all of this, it's all going to work together. But now we have this cluster of different systems that don't talk to each other. And you can't transfer your knowledge with you. And so you always got to fill out all this paperwork. So it's like, can't we get something that's consolidated with this thing? I don't know. I mean, I got to ask you though, because we're going to run out of time here and I got a couple minutes left. Your business experience with racism, why was that an important point? Because you have that as one of your bullets. Can you please explain why that's so important? I think most of us understand that there's reasoning behind this, but from an actuarial perspective, why is that so important?
Not so much from an actuarial experience, but from a human resource experience. I have done work at Howard University on diversity and profitability. And that study was over a period of 3 or 4 years. And the bottom line is, in short, for you, is that the more diverse a company is, the more profitable it is.
There we go. That's the bottom line. See, we saved this for towards the end of the show, everybody, because diversity, because you have different inputs coming into your processes and your products and your services, you can serve all of these other people because you have a variety, a melting pot of ideas. All right, what's our takeaway, brother? I got a minute to go before we got to wrap this thing. Your first visit to the radio program. I appreciate you very, very much for doing what you did. What would you like to leave the listeners with?
I'm not sure. I'd have to say, find out what you do best and then find out what you do better. Link those two together and see if there's a way that you can create synergy, no matter what it is. If it's music or math, if it's dancing or singing, if it's football and or soccer. But be an athlete in all ways. Be a mathematician that's also someone who reads. Try to link these things up to see if there's synergy in them that will be greater than the whole.
I love it. When you build synergy into your life, doing things that you're not really comfortable with what you like to do, like at the gym, when I encourage people, if you're always going to gravitate towards things you like to do, you need to gravitate towards the things you don't like to do to make you more rounded. All right. With that, I want to close the show, and I want to thank my guest today, David B. Walker, for being with me. If our show fits your business or group's mission, we want to be of service to you through our guests. Again, if you want to get a hold of David, please send us a note through the contact box, and I will forward that forward for you. Always remember, before you can share love with others, you must love yourself first. I close every episode with that little line. Thanks again to David B. Walker, Sandy, Craig, Brock. We'll talk to everybody next week, and have a great week, everybody. Go out and ignite your life. Remember, the Tom Matt Show is a production of Boomers Rock Media. We want to bring your story to life. And lastly, I want to say thank you to Mitch Anderson and Vanessa, our production team. Thank you so much. We are out.
The Tom Matt Show is produced by Mitch Anderson of Black Circle Studios. Original music from the Source of Light and Power by the Ark of All.